Hey everybody, this is Speaking in Colour podcast and I'm your host, Bulou ME Tuisue, aka B. Identity. Probably one of life's biggest puzzles. It's forever shifting, evolving, and challenging you to find who you are in that moment in time. As an Indigenous person in this day and age, the pathway to self-discovery is riddled with expectations, conflicting viewpoints, and a world that seems to be unraveling. Today, we start at the beginning of that pathway. Here's to the journey. Hey, so we are officially starting the second episode of Speaking in Colour. I am so excited, super grateful to be in this position to be able to share my story and other people's stories on a platform like this. So I did want to say a big thank you to everyone that has supported the podcast, has given me comments. I've received nothing but positive feedback and I'm just super excited for what the future holds. We've only released one episode and this will be the official second one. So I'm looking forward to the future and I'm really excited for people to hear the guests that I have coming on to the show. Today's episode is going to focus on the 411. I've named it the 411 because back in the 90s, 411 would really mean like the lowdown, give you the info, what's happening. And so 411 is just going to be a little bit intimate between me and you, the listener, on what my story is and also why I wanted to do a podcast like this and why it's important to me. If you hear any noise in the background, ignore it. So I'm going to start at the beginning. There's a lot of information to take in and I'm trying to remember everything that I want to say. I'm going to be completely honest. This is like the fourth recording that I've done of this because I listen back and I like some of the content, but then I'm like, I forgot to mention this, so I have to start the recording again. And I don't even bother trying to edit it. I just start it all over again. So that's why I'm a little bit with myself. So let's start at the beginning. Why I wanted to start this podcast, and there's a little bit of history to it. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how I grew up, give you some history on me, and then move and segue into why I started the podcast. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Bulou ME Tuisue. A lot of people call me B. There will be an episode on name of pronunciation and why I've just settled with B. It's just a lot easier for people to remember and people can pronounce it because it's very easy. I moved to New Zealand when I was about 8 or 9. I was born in Melbourne, Australia, and I moved over to Fiji quite young. So Mum had me in Aussie because of the healthcare. It was better there. I lived in Fiji for a little bit and I was surrounded by a lot of family members, a lot of friends, and most importantly, people that looked like me. So I wasn't in any way felt like an outsider. I never felt that. Obviously, because I was young, it's not something that you think about, but I want you to remember that for the rest of the story. Mum moved over to New Zealand to further her education in nursing, and I followed a couple of years after because she wanted me to have the same education as she did. Not in nursing, but just like the opportunity to come to a developed country and I'm not saying Fiji isn't developed, but it's a little bit more developed, so the education system is better. So I came over when I was younger and my parents enrolled me into Queen Margaret College, which is an all-girls school and it's a private school. So it's from preps, which is pretty much kindergarten, all the way up to year 13 college. So I went there. The first couple of years of being in Queen Margaret College was amazing, from what I can remember. The school was so rich in their own culture, and learning that and being a part of that was really great for me. I absolutely loved it. And the years leading on from when I started there, there were really good points in going to school at QMC. One of the things that really hit me hard was when I started high school. And high school here in New Zealand is about year 8, year 9, I'd say year 9. That's when different things started coming into play. And I don't know whether it was because I was old enough to kind of understand what was going on, but I definitely remember feeling the change and the shift. One of the things that stood out to me was people always commenting on the way that I looked, my physical features. I was really tall, so that wasn't too out of the ordinary, but my skin color, my hair was different. I had bushy eyebrows, I still do, but a little bit better these days. People will comment on my lips, my nose, things like that. And over time, it really hacked away at my self-confidence. And I really didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. I was bullied for about 2 years in high school, and I just really felt like an outsider because at the school I was going to, and this is no hate for QMC, but there wasn't a lot of diversity there. I mean, there were girls that probably were half Māori or maybe part Samoan, but there was no one that I knew that really looked like me and had the same background as me. So it was really hard to relate to any kind of conversations. So what I had to do, and a lot of people will think that this is not the right word to use, but I feel like it is. In order to survive high school, I had to morph myself into other things. I had to pretend that I had certain things. I had to be a yes man, change the way that I walked, change the way that I talked, so that people would accept me and be friends with me. And so I made those changes. Little did I know those changes would really affect me for the rest of my life. It seems dramatic, I know it does, but that's really what happened. After a really bad bullying situation at Queen Margaret College, I begged my mum, I said, please let me change schools. She had to talk to my father about it, so they agreed that they'd send me to a different school. And because my parents are religious, they thought, okay, we'll send you to a Catholic school. So I ended up going to St. Mary's College in Wellington. And that got a little bit better for me because there were Pacific Islanders there, and I saw that people looked like me. I felt a little bit more comfortable. I had grown up in years. The bullying at Queen Margaret College from the people that did it to me kind of roughed me up a little bit. And so I became a lot more guarded. But I also knew how to maneuver myself around groups. I knew how to befriend different people in different ways and become a yes man, really. The thing that really got me at St. Mary's College was that the reason why I moved there was obviously to be around people that looked similar to me, had similar values. We were at a Catholic school, so I thought people would have the same values as I did. I'm not saying I was like angel child, but I mean like, you know, there were more similarities than there were at QM. And the thing that really got me is that I was still bullied at St. Mary's College. And it was by the people that looked like me. I would be made fun of for my skin color. I would be made fun of my hair, my body, just different parts of my body. And growing up and going through puberty really was tough on my mental. So I hid behind an identity that I still carry with me today. It's still a really big part of me, and that is basketball. I chose basketball as one of my main sports. I played a lot when I was younger, and I kind of hid behind that because I thought if people were going to not accept me for the way that I look, I'm going to play really well. And people are going to like me because of the way that I played. And no, the bullying still followed because I tried to sweep it under the rug. And what it created over the years was a little void. And it created me just not being happy with myself. And my self-esteem was low. I just wasn't happy. I wasn't proud of who I was. I didn't like the color of my skin. I didn't like my hair, so I straightened it most of the time. I tried to change the way that I was, really. I wanted to be someone different. My final years of college, that's high school for people that are not from New Zealand, was at Mana College. Diversity ticks the boxes. There was a lot of different cultures there. There were even other Fijians there. So that was even, that was great. But a new challenge followed me to a new college. Now that I was coming to terms with, you're Fijian, man, you can't change that. You're Indigenous Fijian. You're Indigenous Fijian woman. And you can't change that. So I started being a little bit more accepting of who I was. And when I did that, a new obstacle was laid out in front of me. I didn't know how to speak the language fluently. Knowing the protocols and the culture was at an all-time low because I live in New Zealand. It's not like every day I can walk down to the beach and see a mbure down there and ask people how to do certain things. And so that was my new challenge. When I left high school and I started venturing off into adulthood, my early 20s, that void was still there. It was something that I can't explain. And it really, really took a toll on the way that I lived my life and how reckless I was. It also played a huge part in my mental health issues. There was the obvious being isolated because I was obviously hard on myself and how I looked. And I cared so much about other people's opinions of myself that my opinions didn't matter anymore. And I didn't know what to do. And while all this is happening through primary school, intermediate, college, leaving college, one thing that was very, very prominent in my life, and still is, but that was very consistent, was my mum. My mum is originally from an island in Fiji called Taveuni, Vuna in Taveuni. And she is the parent that has brought me up. My father is still involved in the picture, but they obviously are separated. She is the one that brought me up. So my mum was a very consistent person in my life, and the way that she handled herself and the way that she was the same person to this day. Like, she's just never changed. And one of the main things she used to tell me was, you have to learn your language. Where are you from? You're not from here. You're not Māori. You're not Samoan. You're not white. You're not trying to be any of that. You're literally an Indigenous woman and you're my daughter, and you need to know where you come from. And I thought to myself, I don't need to know all that. I'm in New Zealand. What good is that going to do me here? Little did I know that she actually had a point. She knew what she was talking about. And so I got to my mid-20s and I thought to myself, why do I feel so empty? I just don't feel good about myself. And I asked my mum, and she said, I'm very deep in my roots. I know where I come from. There's this confidence in the way that she is because she knows who she is. And she's so deeply rooted in her culture and her language. And I admire that a lot about her. And as I get older, I understand how important it is in our lives. And so I started my self-discovery journey. And there's two elements to this self-discovery journey that I've taken. And obviously I'm going to elaborate a little bit more in maybe some other episodes. But the first thing that I had to do was come to terms with my insecurities and my demons, really. Understand that until I accept the way that I am and learn to love myself, I'm not going to be happy. So it takes steps. So the first thing that I noticed was that I'm going to address the obvious. I don't look like everybody else. So let's put the beauty standards to the side and let's take a look at what makes me me. And that starts with my culture, where I come from, my language, having a deep understanding for where my family even came from, knowing their story, being truly involved in that aspect of my life. So I got involved with Mum's organisation that she started with her family 20 years ago. And I am now the CEO of that organisation. I'm also involved in Radio Viti. So Viti is Fiji. And what we do is it's pretty much a radio program, or like our radio, I guess, group within the organisation that takes care of different shows that cater to different, I guess, demographics or different groups within the Fijian community. And it is prominently the Fijian language. So I take care of the youth radio show, and I teach kids how to speak the language. Obviously, I'm still learning, but it's a way for me to get involved and to show that I'm at the forefront of all this, and that I want people to understand where they come from, and I will be there to help you. Ever since I made that change in my life, it seems like everything seems to fall into place. I have a great understanding of who I am now as a person. I am not afraid to ask questions about where I'm from. I love to hear stories about how my mum grew up, and also just knowing what makes me me. Once I unlocked all of that, I started to truly understand myself, and then the self-love, I wouldn't say automatically, but it started to fill me up. And that is why I started this podcast. That was such a long explanation, but that's why I started this podcast. And you don't necessarily need to be an Indigenous person, or need to be someone that is from the Pacific. Everyone comes from somewhere. But I feel like a lot of our Pacific, Māori, Indigenous people get put into the back burner because of so many other issues that obviously stem from different things. And I want our people, and I want people that look like us, to understand that you are more than the stereotype that people tell you to be. That there is a mental health journey that you have to take when you're growing up. There are some pages you have to turn. There are some issues that you're going to have to face. And I want a place where people can come and listen to someone's story, and hopefully it will resonate with them. It seems like stories get more accepted when the person telling them looks like you, or has similar stories or similar experiences to you. It goes down a little bit easier. So that's why Speaking in Colour was born. I've met a lot of amazing people in my life. Some that have a huge influence, whether it be on social media or physically, they are doing really well for themselves. And there are people that walk among us that a lot of people don't know exist. And I hope to share everyone's story, which is why I'm so proud of where this is at and how many people have responded the way that they have. If I have to leave with a message for everyone, from someone that is still on a self-discovery journey, I encourage you to really take a look at what makes you you. And you could already have an answer for that, which is amazing. But for those of you that don't know, you have to start somewhere, and that decision lies with you. I do wish you the best on your self-discovery journey. And I hope that this podcast will be hopefully the start for some people. And if not, let's carry on this journey together. If it's not the start, let's keep propelling ourselves forward to be, I guess, better for ourselves so that we can be better for others. And that's all I have to say today. Thanks for joining me on today's episode, everybody. Be kind to one another, stay healthy, and be the baddest version of yourself. Mother Manda.